Hey everybody, Joe, pal, Brian Hunt. Welcome to another episode of 60 Seconds of Risk. And today I've got the pleasure of having a very good friend, Doug Janowski with Lazear Capital Partners. Doug, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Doug, I know the pleasure about what you do at Lazear. Why don't you tell the audience what Lazear is all about?
Sure. Thank you, Brian.
Sure.
So we are a 23-year-old now, non-traditional investment bank. We focus specifically on the world of ESOP advisory, structure, feasibility, and formation. So we work with business owners and advisors to help them understand if employee ownership, i.e. an ESOP, is the right succession plan for them and their business.
Right. Now, so prior to my work at USI in my prior firm, I actually had the pleasure of working at a construction firm, Austin Industries, which was an ESOP. And so I was my first time having been there, learned about ESOPs and what they can do and the benefit of them. So in a nutshell, what would you say is sort of like the highlights of an ESOP?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, there's obviously several exit strategies that owners can pursue or evaluate. The interesting thing about an employee ownership, it's truly a tax structure at its nature.
Yeah.
It was designed by Congress to incent owners to look at their employees as their exit strategy / succession plan. And so for that reason, they gave it several tax advantages that other offers for a business can simply not match. So the two keys being that, one, if you look at selling to your employees, there's an opportunity to either defer the capital gains tax indefinitely, or eliminate it altogether. And then two, once the business is then owned in its entirety by a retirement plan, the business itself is free from ever paying federal or state income taxes again.
Okay.
So you sell tax-free, which is a benefit to the owner, and then the business itself becomes tax-free.
Obviously. And so there was an actual article early in the year from New York Times talking about the increasing popularity of ESOPs, especially in the construction world. And I think you and I both know this, and there's a lot of owners who have built these firms up, they've done it for 40 years, have created a great value for the firm and lots of employees. But they don't necessarily have second or third generation that, especially this generation, wants to get in construction. So the concept of an ESOP is a way for them to give it on to the personnel and make sure it still operates. Are you still seeing that sort of interest right now?
100%.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting, the world of, and that's why I spend a lot of my time with construction contractors, not just because my dad was a civil engineer and I grew up in that environment.
Yes.
But it tends to be, one, the owners really enjoy what they do. They enjoy their people, they enjoy the business, their relationships, their clients. They've built those over 40 years, to your point. A lot of the times that next generation is looking to become attorneys or doctors. I met an owner at Texo who said, these are my guys, and my kids want to be attorneys and doctors. They don't want to run this thing, so I'm looking for what that next step looks like.
Okay.
We actually did an ESOP up in northern Ohio, and I love this quote. It was a third generation family business. And when they did the announcement, they had the mayor of the town there, they had all the employees, and their quote to the employees was, "This has now been passed on through 3 generations of our family, and we're now giving it to the 4th generation of our family, which is all of you."
And we talked about it earlier. There is a risk component or risk mitigation strategy that's related to ESOPs, beyond insurance. And would you kind of touched on it there? Would you expand on that?
Yeah, so I have a risk background. I was originally, I won't date myself by saying how long ago, studying to be an actuary.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different risks, and there's ways to address risk. So one, you can spread the risk, you can retain the risk, you can hedge the risk. There's all sorts of different ways, but a lot of advisors like yourself are helping owners to look at that from the company perspective. What we find is there are other risks that are not necessarily company related, but are to the owner. And significantly, most of the owners I meet with, 80, 90, 100% of their wealth is tied up in the actual company itself. Okay. And so the risk that they're retaining is that they will be able to keep working. A lot of times these are 65-year-old owners, 60s, 70s, and they love what they do, so they want to keep working, but they're taking this risk that if something happens to them, the business could immediately fall into distress, because those relationships are often the owners, the banks, the advisors, their customers. So what we get, and this is one of the things that attracted me to joining the firm that I'm at now, was that we offer an alternative where an owner continues to be part of the company for 7 years, 10 years, however long they determine, but they're able to decouple their wealth from the business over time every year, so they can start planning for their own personal college funds, retirement plans, and diversifying. So a lot of the times when I meet with an owner, we ask them, we say, hey, we're not saying to stop collecting acorns and put them in the tree. We're saying keep collecting acorns, but start putting them into other trees. The business itself can't be just your only asset, because if something tragic happens, and it does, people pass, people get sick, and now the business is distressed. And so back when I was in valuation, we worked a lot with estates, and for that reason I knew a lot of distressed and turnaround advisors, because when someone unexpectedly has a tragedy or something happens, I would offer to bring in someone to try to save the business. Whereas the ESOP gives them a time component that a traditional exit doesn't.
Fantastic.
You just sell the business, you're out.
Yeah.
With this, you can determine that time component to make that succession happen more smoothly.
Awesome. Hey, Doug, this has been a wealth of information. Thank you so much for sharing. Like always, guys, if you've enjoyed this, hopefully please leave a comment or make a post on LinkedIn for any topic or person you want me to interview with. Also, you can subscribe to my channel on YouTube. You can also find these posts on Twitter. Until next time, guys, thank you.